You and most people have Stockholm Syndrome, and your kidnapper is your mind. Tom Frayer asked, why do some poor people vote for politicians who clearly only support the needs of the wealthy? Thomas Frank answered this question in his book, What's the Matter with Kansas, where he postulated that people were voting for their cultural interests over their economic interests. People in the heartland are more than a little bit religious, and over the years the Republican Party have pulled them into their ranks by focusing on wedge issues like gay marriage and abortion and prayer in schools and stuff like that. So a lot of lower income Christians find themselves voting for politicians that are slashing their benefits while giving tax cuts to the rich, essentially cutting off their nose to spite their face. Now I think that Frank makes a compelling argument, but I also think that the real core issue goes a lot deeper than that. The fact is, these people are guilty of something that really we're all guilty of, and that's acting on attachments. An attachment is really anything outside of yourself, be it an object or a symbol or an idea that you have brought on as part of your identity. And on the surface, there's nothing wrong with that. It helps us to make sense of our world. It helps us to categorize things into ways that make sense. It helps us to socialize with other people that share our values and interests. It's basically a shorthand for living your life so that you don't have to overthink everything that comes your way. You can just say, I'm a Mac person, or I'm a PC person, or I'm into iPhones, or I'm more of an Android guy, or I'm a Democrat, or I'm a Republican. But the problem with attachments is that once you take something on as your identity, it's really hard to see it for what it really is. It's just too personal. It's kind of like that old saying, the fish is the last one to know it's in the water. And it's extremely hard to let go of something that you consider to be a part of yourself. It's just too personal. It's like somebody asking you to cut off your arm. No amount of facts or evidence is ever going to make you do that. In fact, many studies have shown that when people are confronted with facts that disprove their beliefs, they tend to dig in their heels and believe even harder. You see, we're not logical animals. As much as we may want to think that we are, we're much more guided by emotion, and when somebody tells you that something that you have identified as part of yourself is wrong, it hurts. And we don't always handle that emotion very well. There's a really big debate right now over the Confederate flag and what it represents, and it's actually very relevant to this conversation, but first I gotta give a little bit of history. And the first thing we gotta straighten out is that this was never actually the Confederate flag. This was the Confederate flag. And this flag served its purpose really well, but as it turns out, it became a problem in battles because from a distance, it looks quite a bit like the other guy's flag, especially when you have all the smoke and the chaos and the searing pain and blood in your eye. So after a few too many incidents of the Confederate Army, pointing a cannon at itself, they decided that they needed a battle flag that looked nothing at all like the American flag. And hence, you get the battle flag. It eventually became more popular than the stars and bars and actually made its way onto a few official flags toward the end of the war. And let's just be honest for a second, as a design, it's actually kind of cool. It's kind of like an Americanized version of a Union Jack. But the important part of this story is what happened after the Civil War, which is that this flag kind of disappeared. For about 100 years, it wasn't flown over any state capitals. It wasn't considered to be this great symbol of the South. It was just this thing from the past, It was used by a few continuing secessionist groups, but those were more like fringe elements. But all that changed in the 1950s during the early period of the Civil Rights Movement when efforts were made to desegregate the South. Once again, the federal government stepped in to enforce the beliefs of the rest of the nation on the South, and once again, the South rebelled. And while they didn't go as far as to secede this time, obviously, they did resurrect the battle flag, and they started flying it at courthouses and state houses as sort of a symbolic gesture of war, as a protest. And it's kind of been flying ever since. So yeah, like it or not, both during the Civil War and the Civil Rights Movement, this flag was flown in an effort to preserve a racist system. It's very clearly associated with that. But does that very clearly make the people who support the flag racist? Well, not necessarily. Because it's not like most of those flag supporters look at that flag and see it as a symbol of how much they hate black people. It's just an attachment. It's part of their identity as a Southerner. They think about that flag and they think about growing up in the South and swinging on tire swings and going to family reunions and making out at Lynyrd Skynyrd concerts. Making out at family reunions. And look, I get it. I grew up in Texas, and Texas was a part of the Confederacy, but we don't really identify as being part of the Confederacy or the South. Texas kind of has its own thing. We got our own symbols and idolatry and pride, and oh my God. You think Southerners have some pride. You take the average amount of pride that a Southerner has about being Southern and feed it a steady diet of steroids and PCP and shoot it with gamma rays and turn it into a pride Hulk and then give that Hulk all the infinity stones to give it all the power in the universe, and then you're getting close to what the average Texan feels about being a Texan. But growing up, I never thought anything negative about the Confederate flag, you know. I love the Dukes of Hazzard. And for a lot of Southerners, it represents a lot of positive things about their upbringing. They identify with it. This is how attachments work. And when you tell somebody that this attachment that they care so much about actually represents some of the most despicable and horrible ideas in human history, it's gonna get ugly. This is how attachments don't work. But no matter how sincere these guys might be about it being heritage and not hate, for far too many people in this country, it is about hate. White supremacists and extremist groups around the country have adopted this flag as their symbol. They stitch it on their clothes, they carry it with them at rallies, they use it to intimidate and strike fear into people. And the reality of society is that no matter what it means to you, when that happens, it's game over, man. You gotta let it go. Whether it's seeing attachments in other people or recognizing your own attachments and creating a separation between you and them, understanding this concept, I think, is one of the single most fundamentally important things we need to do as a species. Because whether you're voting for somebody that's working against your interest or supporting a symbol of hate, you can't move forward while you're digging in your heels. In the end, you're only hurting yourself. Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked what I had to say here whatsoever and you're new, click subscribe up above. I come back every Monday with cool and interesting videos that will make you more interesting around your friends in the water cooler at work. You can support the channel by giving me a thumbs up down below. It tells Google to put me out in front of more people. By the way, I've got a dedicated Facebook page up now that's just for this show. Go check it out. You can like it. I not just post all these videos on there, but I also post supporting things that, articles and whatnot that supports what I'm talking about. You know, it's kind of like we continue the conversation throughout the week. Also, if you're on Periscope, I'm on there. You can follow me. I've got the address up down here somewhere. I like to follow up and do some cool live videos where I talk about this kind of stuff, and you can interact with me and we can have more of a conversation. It's really cool. Alright, thanks again for watching. All of you guys have a great week. Love you guys. Take care.